Hello friends, welcome to EduCBA's program on report writing. Now when we talk about a report writing program in this context, we are inherently assuming that we are looking at something called sell-side report. A sell-side report is nothing but an investment banking sell-side, like for example JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. When they kind of advise their own set of clients, they come up with different kinds of reports. So we will call that as a sell-side report. So please do not confuse these kind of reports with let's say a project report which a student may submit to their own set of professors, or a PhD report. You know, they're kind of very different from the sell-side report which we are talking about. So the objective number one in this context of this program would be to understand what are the kinds of sell-side report that are published, and what are the do's and don'ts of this sell-side report, and what are the objectives, essentially why they are published, what are the kind of clients that they're talking about, what is their purpose. So we will look at as an objective number one, what is a sell-side report and its do's and don'ts. So that is objective number one. Number two, so when we write any kind of a report, for example, the process involves a lot of data gathering and analysis. In this context of sell-side report, we will kind of assume that the data gathering has already been done, and students are kind of familiar with concepts of financial modeling, valuations, accounting, understanding what are the reports. In this context, annual reports, press releases, etc. So objective number two here is that when we talk about data gathering, there has to be a specific method in which data needs to be gathered. But what we will inherently look at is there are some important elements of this data that we will kind of pull together while we write a report. So though this module will not be discussed in too much detail, but it becomes a fundamental important process of report writing, and which is very important. Now number three, when we look at the report writing process and the objectives here, number three would be to define the logic behind presenting the idea. Once you have collected the data, have done the analysis, it is very important to put forth the logic and the investment idea which you want to kind of present to your clients. And in order to actually visualize this in a much more better fashion in terms of its comprehensiveness or maybe presentability, etc., what we will look at is how to develop a logic of preparing a research report. So here we will look at a concept developed by Barbara Minto, and we will essentially look at Barbara Minto's pyramid principle, and in this context how this will be useful in terms of defining this data gathered here, which will be slightly unstructured, to providing a structure using this pyramid principle. So we will be heavily investing our time and energies in discussing this concept. So on one side this will be very limited, number two, because we'll be assuming that all of us have done these things in our previous set of video tutorials. So our primary focus would be number three, that is defining the logic. Now when the logic has been defined and you know how to write, finally it comes to writing. So that's what we will do in terms of our objective number four. So some of the do's and don'ts in terms of how to write a report in the context of sell side, and what ideas needs to be presented first, the language that is used, all of these things will be discussed when we talk about the writing part. So just a quick summary of the objectives. The first objective would be to discuss the sell side report. What exactly are these, the key elements? Number two would be to related to data gathering, but here this would be more limited in terms of just connecting the dots, like what is a financial model, valuations, and how you must have collected the data. Number three would be to define the logic of putting a structure to the data which we have gathered using a principle which is Barbara's Minto principle, which we feel is a very fundamental and important principle. And number four is to actually write the report. So This is the objective of this whole course of report writing.